everybody, myself Chintan, and once again welcome you all to this wonderful webinar, VYOM webinar on observational and theoretical astronomy, which is jointly organized by Astronomica, which is an astronomy club of St. Xavier's College, Ahmedabad, Department of Physics and Electronics from St. Xavier's College, Autonomous Ahmedabad, association with Essence Tech. Today, we have an eminent scientist with us. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Tushar Pandya, sir, to introduce our today's speaker. Yes, sir. Please.
Thank you, Chintan. Good afternoon to all participants and physics educators online. Friends, it gives me great pleasure to introduce an eminent scientist, Professor Umesh Joshi. As Chintan said, Professor U.C. Joshi, we call him U.C. Joshi, is a senior scientist in astronomy and astrophysics division of Physical Research Laboratory. Friends, he has worked on various scientific positions at Physical Research Laboratory. He has worked as a reader, associate professor, professor in astronomy and astrophysics division. Friends, during the period of 1998 to 2001, he worked as a chairman of astronomy and astrophysics division of Physical Research Laboratory. At present, he is a honorary professor at Physical Research Laboratory. Friends, he is a pioneer researcher. His area of interest is study of blazars and radioquote quasars, study of inner region of Milky Way and comets. His more than 100 research papers are published in international peer-reviewed journals, and some additional more than 60 papers are in conferences proceeding. 3 to 5 students work under his supervision and the awarded PhD degree. Friends has conducted many courses on astronomy and astrophysics to the graduate students in Physical Research Laboratory. He was a resource person in space science courses conducted every alternate year for the PhD student by PRL. As a visiting faculty, he has given many courses on astronomy and astrophysics to master students and MTech students at several universities. Friends, I'm very happy to inform you that Professor Umesh Joshi is also a visiting faculty for our MSc program of St. Xavier's College. Sir, we sincerely thank you for supporting our activities, supporting our student, and maintaining our student. Thank you, sir. Besides his engagement in all these academic activities, Professor Joshi has also worked as a reviewer of Journal of Current Science. Friends, he was a member of national and international academic bodies like International Astronomical Unit, which we call IAU, as well as Astronomical Society of India, which we say ASI. During the period of 2002 to 2008, he was a member of Scientific Advisory Committee of IUCA, as well as Space Application Center. Friends, there is a long list of his administrative and academic services. I think we are very fortunate we have an expert with us. So with this brief introduction, I request Professor Umesh Joshi for the third.
Thank you, Tushar bhai. Congratulate this Astronomy Club of Xavier's College and Department of Physics and Electronics for organizing this kind of webinar using Zoom facility. And I believe that this technology will be future technology and classes can be taken based on this facility. Thank you very much for inviting me for this lecture. See, I shall be talking on solar system and exoplanets. Um, solar system, all of you are familiar, uh, but there are several issues which we don't understand about solar system, and the current study on exoplanets also help us to understand the formation of solar system. I shall try to bring out some points in this context. Um, See, the plan of my talk is solar system, and in passing, I shall talk about exoplanets. The idea is again to connect the study on exoplanets to the study of solar system, especially formation of solar system. See, my interest has been on minor bodies in solar system, like asteroids, comets. So we had made good amount of research work in these areas. So I thought it is good time to speak on these areas. And then basically what we learned from these minor bodies in the solar system. So this is the plan of the talk. Um, we all know the solar system. Sun is the energy source of the solar system. Is a star, is a typical star like any other star. And then apart from the sun, it has a family of planets. You all know that nearest planet is Mercury, then Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter. In between Mars and Jupiter, we have this asteroid belt. I'll talk about this later. Then we have Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. This is not to the scale, just to show the um, layout of the planet. All these planets, they are confined to a plane. We call it ecliptic. So they all move in a plane. Um, this indicates that the formation of all the planets and the sun happen together. They are all moving in the same direction, confined to the same plane. So this is a simple inference that this whole system formed together. Um, okay, this is to the scale. Sun is showing to the left. Then all these four planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, they are relatively much closer to the Sun, and these four planets are called terrestrial planets.
Yes, sir.
And then we have gaseous planet, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. These are gaseous planets. And between Mars and Jupiter, there is a belt consisting of several small bodies. We call it asteroid belt. If you carefully see this, okay, let me come back to next slide. So if you look at this, Jupiter is largest in the size, then Saturn. All gaseous four planets are quite big, and these terrestrial planets are relatively very small. So this picture shows the relative size of the planets. Now, if you go back, um, then you see that Mercury is there nearest to the Sun, then Venus. Venus is bigger than Mercury, and then Earth, then Mars. Mars is smaller. Mars size is half the size of Earth. Intuitively, we feel that Mars should be bigger than Sun, but it is smaller. Then the question is why Mars is smaller? This is one question, and then second question is why there is a asteroid belt, small bodies moving around the Sun between Mars and Jupiter. So these are the questions we have to address. Apart from this, we also need to address Jupiter is at a particular location, Saturn is at a particular location, Uranus is at a particular location, we need to address the question why these planets are sitting at these particular positions. So when we model the solar system, the correct models will answer all these questions. So this is okay. Now I come to again to the solar system. Uh, Between Mars and Jupiter, you see these asteroid belt. So these small bodies. This is a cartoon. This is not to the scale. So there are billions of these small bodies which are moving around the sun at a location of around 3.5 or around 2.5, 2.8 astronomical unit. See, in astronomy, in solar system, the distance, mean distance between Sun and Earth, we call it as 1 astronomical unit. So all the distances I will talk in terms of the uh, distance to the Earth, that is astronomical unit. So now quickly I can go to the formation history. All the stars, they form in a molecular cloud. This is what you might have heard yesterday's talk also. In molecular cloud, when the density in a particular region is sufficient, is more than the critical density, then the cloud can collapse under gravitational forces and eventually it forms a star. When a star forms, the nuclear fusion process takes place at the center of the star, which gives the energy to the star. So the sun also formed in such a typical molecular cloud system. So this is how it happened. There is a molecular cloud in a certain location of the molecular cloud. This star started forming. At the center, this protostar is forming. Along with the protostar, a disk formed. These molecular clouds, they have some rotation, they have some angular momentum. So when a part of the cloud collapses to form the star, angular momentum is to be conserved. So the collapse of the cloud will be along the direction of angular momentum axis. So eventually it will form a plane like a pancake system. At the center there will be main body and then there will be a disk like a pancake. And then it may lead to this kind of structure. These rings can form. It all depends on the resonance regions. We will not discuss much on this theoretical part. So based on the resonance region, a certain region get more density and certain region get empty. And then eventually these regions, small dust grains will grow into bigger particle and the bigger particle will again coalesce to form again form to boulders and then these boulders again coalesce to form planets. So this is how these planets form. So eventually you have planets around the central star. So this is the scenario which is well accepted and this is supported by the study of the exoplanet. Uh, okay, before I go to that, um, see, this is the sun or a star, central star, and this is the disk which is forming. The temperature of the disk drops as you go towards the outer region. So the temperature decreases as the distance from the sun decreases. So this is how so the temperature is higher here and it decreases as you go away from the sun. Now what happens? The region which is closer to the star or closer to the sun, uh, only metals and silicates, they can condense. Ices cannot, ice won't be existing there. So closer to the sun, where the temperature is around 1500 Kelvin or 15 to 2000 degree Kelvin, metals and silicate can condense and form the bigger body. But as you go out, the temperature drops. Here is a snow line. That is, the temperature is close to the 0 degrees Celsius, where the snow can form. And outside this region, we can have ices like water ice, carbon dioxide ice, ammonia ice. All these ices can exist here in this region, apart from the hydrogen and helium gas. So in this inner region, because metals and silicates only can condense, so the bodies, which planets which form here, will be having only metals and silicate. So in case of terrestrial planet, in case of solar system, we have Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. These bodies formed in this region where the temperature was lower. So they were smaller and they are solid bodies. But as you go out, the bigger planets can form, bigger ices can also form. So there is lot of material available for the formation of bigger bodies. So Jupiter, Saturn, or Neptune, these bigger planets could form in the outer region. In outer region also, the core is basically, to start with, it is metallic or silicate core, and then this core accreted hydrogen and helium and ice and form a bigger bodies. But in the inner region, because of the temperature, all the gases were blown out. There were no gases, so it's only metal and silicate which form the planets. So this is how, based on this kind of scenario, we can explain the terrestrial planet and gaseous planets. So this is how it happens. Now see what happens is a time scales are very long. So small particles, dust particles, they form small grains. Small particles make bigger stone, then boulders, and these boulders, these boulders, um, these boulders can further coalesce and form much bigger bodies, and that is how planet formed. It happened in a few million years time scale. So like this, so in the inner region we have Earth, Venus, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. Then this snow line, and then we have Jupiter. And this. See, now the question is, as I asked, I use this slide to explain few things. Why this Mars is smaller compared to Earth? Number one. Number two, according to Bohr's law, we should have a planet at the location between Mars and Jupiter. And we have asteroid belt there. Now, how this happened? See, what happened when Jupiter formed? See, what modeling tell us, initially Jupiter formed at a distance of 3.5 astronomical unit. Presently, Jupiter is at 5.2 astronomical unit. Now, after the formation of Jupiter core, there was a lot of gas and material, and due to friction between gas and Jupiter, Jupiter migrated inward up to a distance of 1.5 radii. So when it moved inside, the small bodies were scattered by the large gravitational field in all directions. So it moved inward initially. Um, See, you can explain this. When Jupiter is moving in the gaseous cloud, there is a viscous force. You can imagine that the outer edge of the Jupiter is moving faster compared to the inner edge. So there was a larger viscous force in the outer edge compared to the inner edge. Due to this, there was a kind of torque, and the Jupiter lost its angular momentum, orbital angular momentum, and it started moving inward. Then during this motion, Jupiter scattered many small bodies from here. So there were not many bodies left to form the planet in this region where we have this asteroid belt. So very few bodies were left to form a bigger planet. So this is the hypothesis. And then when most of the gas was lost, Jupiter got locked with this resonance orbit with the Saturn, and it started moving outward, and it moved up to the present position, which is at 5.2 astronomical unit. Similarly, Saturn has inward motion and outward motion. So these motions of these large planets scattered small bodies in all directions, and these bodies form a Oort cloud and also Neptunian Kuiper belt object. I will come to that when I talk about the solar system formation. So this is how we understand this scenario, and this is supported by the present hypothesis, present study on exoplanet. Before I go to exoplanet, say this is the situation when all the gas is lost now. See, gas will be slowly lost, so only these bodies were left, and then sun is here. So how our hypothesis of solar system formation is supported by the present study of exoplanet. I give one or two examples. This one star HD 15115, it shows a larger disk. To observe this, there is a occultation method, which is a complex method, which obscure the central star, and then the remaining part surrounding areas can be imaged. So this is the disk which it shows. So we talk about the disk of solar system, but now we have evidence that disk can exist, and to get an idea of the size, so this is the size of Neptune orbit, and this is 200 astronomical unit. So this is much larger than 200 astronomical unit, maybe 500 astronomical unit. So disk is there. This is the detection of exoplanet Beta Pictoris b. Again, here the central star was occulted by a technique called coronagraph kind of technique. The center is here. This Pictoris b is here. This is small star. So this was detected, and then you have the disk. The orbital period, the mass of this planet, exoplanet, is 8 times the mass of Jupiter. This is called Beta Pictoris. Beta Pictoris is the star, and Beta Pictoris b, that is the planet which is sitting here. Orbital period of this star is 17.35 years, and orbital distance is 7 to 15 astronomical unit. And this is the disk which is still there. It has not evaporated yet, but in future this disk will be lost. So this is how disk hypothesis is getting support from the exoplanet study. Not only this, most see in the majority of cases the planet is of Jupiter size, but the temperature of that is much higher. That means, and these objects are very close to the home star, host star. So as I said, the Jupiter form at our Jupiter, it formed at 3.5 solar, uh, 3.5 astronomical unit distance from the sun, and then it migrated inward. And at that situation, Jupiter might be quite hot. So we see the evidence that um, large, sorry, large mass planets can form close to the star, Jupiter size, but they will migrate outward eventually. Uh, since this exoplanet is mentioned here, a few remarks about exoplanet, how they are detected. Basically, there are several techniques, but three main techniques which are more popular I can discuss here. One is based on Doppler shift due to stellar bubble. What happens to star, if a star is harboring a planet, then this system, star and planet system, will rotate about the common center of mass. Since the mass of the planet is much smaller, the center of mass will be close to the center of the star. And so its bubble will be very small, very small. So that is what is to be detected. So normally, see, if you take, assume that our Jupiter is the only star in the solar system. In that case, we take Jupiter mass and sun. The sun will move just with a velocity of 10 to 12 meters per second, whereas Jupiter will move at a much higher velocity. So to detect this bubble, our accuracy of radial motion measurement should be few meters per second, which is challenging, which is a real challenge. So this is what happens when the emitting object is approaching us. The light will be blue shifted. When it is receding, it will be red shifted. So when this planet star system is moving around, then the light from the star, the spectrum will be shifted to the blue at one time and then to the red, and there will be a periodicity in this. So by measuring this shift, we can measure the velocity. Once we measure the velocity using Kepler's third law, we can measure many other parameters of the planet. The second method is transit method. See, it may happen that the planet and star, the geometry is such that at some time the planet passes across the star. You might have heard about the transit of Venus, transit of Mercury across the sun. Similarly, we may see transit of planet across a particular star, which may be harboring that planet. In that case, when the planet is in front of the star, there may be a small dip in the light, in the brightness of the star. So if we measure this dip in the brightness, we can, and timings, if we know the time, if we measure the timing, we can find the size of the planet, and we can also measure velocity and mass also. So this is the second method. And normally this dip is very small. Earth-based telescope, it is difficult because there is a large amount of background noise. Earth atmosphere emits a lot of light. So space-based telescopes are more important. So Kepler mission was dedicated to finding this exoplanet. In space, the background light is very small, and also the image will be diffraction limited. So it is possible to measure um, maybe 0.01% deep in the light curve. So that is why um, the space mission like Kepler is so successful. But from ground, it is rather difficult. The third method is gravitational microlensing. Um, when a background source light um, is, if any object comes in the line of sight of the star and observer, then due to the mass of the object, the light may get bent. So this is what we call gravitational microlensing. And due to this microlensing, the object may appear slightly brighter. So one can measure the light curve. If one sees the microlensing effect, one can measure the mass of the object, because how much bending takes place, it depends on the mass of the object. So if a star is harboring a planet, and then that planet is responsible for microlensing, then we can measure the mass of the planet. So this is third method. There are several other methods. So this is how these exoplanets are detected. Their mass can be estimated, their size can be estimated, and if we could, these days it is possible to take spectra also, so reflectance spectra at least, so their composition can also be determined. See, this Kepler has been very successful in detecting exoplanet. As on April 2nd, 2020, maybe 15 days back, not 15, week back, there are 4,144 confirmed exoplanets. And the majority of these were discovered by Kepler Space Telescope. There are several other missions also which are working on exoplanet. Kepler, most of these sources are detected by Kepler. And if you look at the distribution, then the sources are distributed like this. So majority of these exoplanets are detected in nearby sky. Then see, this is the distance. This is how distance goes. In astronomy, we measure the distance in parsec. Parsec is 1 parsec is 3.26 light year, but parsec is based on geometrical configuration. So this is how it is used. So this is the distance. So 1500 parsec is a quite distance. Most of these objects are detected in nearby sky, which is quite obvious also. So this is the situation about exoplanet. Covering exoplanet require a couple of lectures, not one lecture. So I thought just in passing I give some idea. It might be good idea for you to invite someone to give full lecture on this exoplanet. Okay, now I move to comets and asteroids. See, comets and asteroids are considered to be primitive material that has not gone under any change since the beginning of the solar system. see these small bodies remain where they were, so there was very less weathering. Comets, they reside in the farthest distances in the solar system, so there is least weathering. So their material is primitive. That means the material which was in the beginning of the formation of solar system, that is still intact in the comet and in asteroids. So this is that is why it is very important to study comets and asteroids to know the initial physical condition of the solar nebula, that is solar cloud out of the solar system form. So I will go into this detail. I talked about asteroids, asteroid belt. Uh, See, based on Bohr's law, it was predicted that there should be a planet between Mars and Jupiter. So people put a lot of effort to detect such planet. They could detect one object, Ceres, which is quite big object. Diameter is around 900 kilometers. So asteroids basically are small rocky objects. Then they contain little volatile material. They mainly are stones or metal, rocky material or metal. So that is the content. And very little volatile material means ice and methane or like ammonia. These are very little there. There are some example of asteroids. Ida, this is one. You just see that they have very irregular shape. These are small bodies, so their gravitational pull is not sufficient to break the chemical bonding. If the body is large, like Ceres, the gravitational force is enough to overcome the chemical bonding, so then the body takes the spherical shape. But smaller bodies cannot take this spherical shape. So most of these asteroids are very irregular. This is Ida. These are important asteroids. They were target for various missions. I'll come to that. Itokawa, Vesta, these are the various asteroids which were targets for various missions. So most of the asteroids are found in asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. That is a distance of 2.2 to 3.3 astronomical unit. That is the region where these objects are located. So as I said earlier, astronomers were looking for a planet between Mars and Jupiter, so they could detect the Ceres in 1801. This is the cartoon showing this. So you have, so this inner region is seen here, yes, asteroid belt. Then beyond Neptune, there are several small bodies. We call them Kuiper belt objects. So these small bodies are either sitting in this between Mars and Jupiter, or this is outer region. Just a digression. Mars has two moons, but these two moons are captured as asteroid. One is Phobos. This is Phobos. The diameter is 22.2 kilometer, and this is Deimos. The diameter is 12.6 kilometer. They are irregular bodies. So at some stage, Mars might have captured these bodies, and they are moving now. They are orbiting Mars, and their orbits are shrinking. So eventually, these bodies will hit this Mars and will merge with the Mars. Phobos is closer to Mars. It orbits at 9,000 377 kilometer, and Deimos is 23.46, 23,460 kilometer. Okay. Okay, classification of asteroids. Just for some reason, this is also needed. Asteroids are mainly of three types. One is C type, then second one is S type, and third one U type or M type. Some people write M type also. C type is carbonaceous. So mainly the carbon content is much higher in this case. They appear dark. So they are, that's why they call carbonaceous asteroids also. And 75% of the all asteroids are C-type asteroids. Their reflectivity is very low, 3 to 4%. So they are very dark in appearance. S-type asteroids are stone, basically silicate. So they are basically silicate material, and 17% of the asteroids are S-type asteroids. Their reflectivities are 15 to 20%. So silicate means a rock type. Then you have M type or U type asteroids. They are small in numbers because 70, they are 2-3% only. They are mainly metallic. Their composition is mainly metallic, and since they are metallic, their reflectivities are very high, up to 60%. As you know, metals are highly reflective. So these are the three types of asteroids. So C-type are probably primitive material asteroid, and they are chemically unchanged since the beginning. The silicate is there, but it's a very small quantity. Mainly it's a carbon, hydrocarbon, etc. So they appear dark because of the carbon-based compounds. S-type are stony asteroids missing so they are missing carbon compounds and only contain silicate, and also they are primitive, say they have not changed much from the beginning. U-type basically they don't fit in C or S type. Their metal content is large, so sometimes they are called M type also. One interesting thing is C-type are found in the outer part of the belt. I talked about the asteroid belt. See, outer belt of the outer asteroid belt, they are mainly C-type asteroids, and inner region of this is M-type, that is closer to the sun. If the M-type are closer to the sun, C-type are farther to the sun. Then some parameters, some properties of some asteroids. Diameter of Ceres is 975 kilometer. Rotation period is 9.1 hour, and around the sun it rotates in 4.6 years. Its density is 2.2 grams per cubic centimeter, which suggests that it is rocky core surrounded by water ice layer with a thin dusty outer crust. So see what is done normally. If we have the information of the density, we can make out whether the planet or asteroid is stony or rocky or metallic or icy material. So density is important parameter. So it gives us a good idea about the composition. And this is Ceres is the largest asteroid in the asteroid belt. Then this um, Vesta is one of the largest asteroid, brighter being closer. This is quite brighter because it's closer, and surface is covered by basalt rock indicating volcanism. So some kind of volcanism might have happened in this. So that's why the surface is basalt. Um, Direct interaction with its surface have shown how it cannot come from Earth. And see, some people conjecture that it is part of the Earth. So this surface structure, it is no, it is not the part of the Earth. So other asteroids, which are important asteroid, Ida. This is S-type asteroid. This is 50 kilometer in length. This is 50 kilometer in length from here to here. Shows space weathering. Space weathering means, see, its surface is smooth. All these bodies were bombarded in the beginning of the formation of solar system, but with weathering, those scars are gone. So the smooth surface indicates that a lot of weathering has taken place. Um, this object was visited by Galileo spacecraft when the Galileo was en route to the Jupiter, and this picture was taken by Galileo, and several pictures in different colors were taken. So we have good information about this. Then Gaspra, this is also asteroid. This is only 200 million year old, formed in collision, and this is 15 kilometer long. This um, okay, Itokawa. This is the uh, asteroid which was target for the Japanese mission Hayabusa. Uh, in first attempt they could not succeed, but in second attempt they collected material, and this material was brought back to the Earth. Um, on 25th November 2005, a second landing and a sampling sequence was attempted. Sample capsule was returned to Earth and landed at Woomera in South Australia on 13 June 2010. So we have now very good idea about the composition of this material through this Hayabusa mission. Now see, we have another category of asteroid we call near-Earth asteroid. See, some of the asteroids from the asteroid belt, sometime due to interaction with other bodies, they change their orbit and they come very close to the Earth. If they approach uh, the Sun, if the approach to the Sun is less than 1.3 astronomical unit, then we call those asteroids near-Earth asteroid. To such asteroid, what happened? Either they will run into planet. Sometimes, see, at Earth, we are worried that this asteroid may hit the Earth sometime. So, or they may be ejected out of the solar system. So there is a lot of effort to detect this near Earth asteroid. This is the statistics. This is the number distribution, number count, and discovery date. Now you see 2005, 16, 17. Up to 2017, um, in 2017, more than 2,000 near-Earth asteroids were detected. These are various missions. See, various missions, various programs are working on this. Linear, NEAT, Space Watch, Lonios, Catalina, Penistar, Neowise, Atlas, and some others. So there are various programs to detect these near Earth asteroids because some of the rare earth asteroid may be major hazard to the Earth. Related to the asteroids, these are meteorites or these are space rocks that hit the Earth. These can come from asteroid belt or Mars, etc., by material ejected out or thrown out by wandering objects until they are pulled in the Earth gravitational field. So sometimes these small bodies um, they change their orbit, and if Earth gravitational field capture that, they will hit the Earth. Um, we know that 65 million years back, dinosaurs or life on the Earth was wiped out because it is believed that a large asteroid hit the Earth, and due to that there was a cloud cover and no sunlight, nothing, so everything got wiped out from the Earth. This this is a crater formed by asteroid hit in Arizona, which is still there. So such hazards are there. Uh, People are making lot of effort to um, pick up these meteorites. Uh, Antarctica is a good place because in Antarctica there is no weathering. So and no weathering. So these meteorites are in the right condition to be further studied. So this is so now see so much about the asteroid. Now about the comets. Comets are small icy bodies containing frozen water and other volatile uh, with the solid grain mixed. These grains are silicate grains, mainly silicate grains. See, one point I can make a clarification here. Um, in interstellar space, 75% is hydrogen, then 23-24% hydrogen, helium, 1 or 2% metals. Most of these metals, they are in the grain forms. They form small grains. So when solar system formed out of a molecular cloud, this molecular cloud also contains these grains, which is just 1% of kind of the full material. So these grains are also mixed with these frozen ices. This is what it means here. So now why we study comets? Comet contain crystalline matter with the signature of formative stage of solar system. See, comets are visiting us from very far distances. Comets bodies are comet nuclei are located beyond Neptune orbit, mostly beyond Neptune orbit or in the Oort cloud. So from these far distances, comets are coming towards us, and at these far distances, there was least weathering because sunlight is very weak there. So there is no almost negligible weathering. So the material in comet is very pristine. It represents the initial material. So studying this comet can tell us the physical condition existing at the time of the formation of solar system. So this is written here, spend most of their time away from the sun, so less weathering. Solar wind, it's constituent an X-ray emission. Their impact is very less at those far off distances. This is a typical comet, Comet Hale-Bopp. I'll explain what are these scales. Comets are most fascinating object in the sky and may represent most primitive bodies in the solar system, essentially unaltered since the earliest days of solar system formation. This is Hale-Bopp, this is Metnod, and see what a beautiful picture they are representing. In case of Hale-Bopp, you see that there is a blue tail here and there is a dust tail. This is dust tail, this is iron tail. We call blue tail is iron tail. What happens? The UV light from the sun ionize the gas. So it forms ions in the comet environment, and then these ions, they are dragged by the solar wind in the direction of the solar wind. So this is the direction of solar wind. Sun is in this direction. So solar wind is hitting these ions and taking them along with the wind. In this dust tail, um, I'll come to this dust tail explanation later. And then this beautiful structure, what you see in comet, is due to the scattering of solar light by the dust waves. So this is basically representing the distribution of dust. Dust is very efficient in scattering the light. So, okay, here it is better seen. This is comet Hale-Bopp. This is iron tail and this is dust tail. When comet approaches sun, the heat from the sun evaporate the ice, which is lying below the crust. So when the gas is released, it makes it the pressure increase and the crust get crack, and then the gas emerges out. The gas carries dust particle along with this. So this dust particle are then moving out. Then the trajectory of the gas, this dust particle will be decided by two factors. One is the original orbit of the comet plus the radiation pressure of the sun. These two parameters will decide this trajectory. So this is different than this. So basically it is the trajectory of the comet. And some deviation from that due to the radiation pressure. Okay. What from all other solar system bodies, by the appearance which include the bright coma and long tail. Tails extend for millions of kilometers. This extension of this tail is million kilometers. Sorry. So, and this will always point away from the sun. The appearance of the comet changes as it moves through its orbit, becoming brighter as it approaches the sun and becomes fainter when it moves away from the sun. Again, it's the same cartoon. You have tail, and then this at the center there is a nucleus. This is a solid body. The material from the solid body get evaporated. It forms a coma here, and this small box is enlarged here. So this is what it shows. So you have gas and dust swept by swept from the coma into the tail, and also you have a hydrogen gas which makes the envelope. So because water is there, UV radiation will break hydrogen, so hydrogen gas forms. So this hydrogen envelope, large hydrogen envelope is formed. From ground based observatories we cannot see this because this emits in ultraviolet. So in UV light, one can see this hydrogen gas, or one can see this in the radio region using 21 centimeter line. So this is how this whole structure is explained. And then see this extension is 100 million kilometer, approximately 6. Okay, this is in miles. Again, what happens when comet approaches from far distances? This is Jupiter orbit. When it crosses Jupiter orbit, so it is crossing this ice line. So then there is sufficient heat, it evaporates the, sublimate the material, tail start forming. As it comes closer, tail becomes larger, and then this always is always in the direction away from the sun. So this is how happened. This is how the tail develops from here, and then in the return it disappears. And again, so what happens? Some comets they periodically visit. Sun. So in each visit, comet lose its volatile material, and after several visits, it might lose all its volatile material. And once all the volatile material is evaporated, then we cannot differentiate between an asteroid and comet nucleus. It is similar to the asteroid body. So sometimes it is difficult to differentiate between cometary body or asteroid. So, home of comets in solar system. Where from these comets come? Comets contain water ice and frozen gases. That means they must originate in the outer part of the solar system, because frozen gases can survive only in the outermost part of the solar system. He predicted the existence of a vast cloud of comet orbiting the sun at a distance of 50,000 astronomical units, and this is named after Oort cloud. See, what was the basis for this prediction? Because some comets they come from any direction. Majority of comets which we see, they are confined to the ecliptic plane, but some comets come in different directions, any random directions. So based on the number of comets and the age of the comet, because every visit comet lose its material, and after several visits comet will not appear like a comet. So based on these statistics, who predicted this presence of a cloud, Oort cloud, that is a small body, spherically distributed in the sky at a distance of 50,000 astronomical units. Then in 1951, Kuiper, because some of the comets, they are confined to the ecliptic, that is the plane of the planets mostly. And then based on this data, he predicted the region of a dormant comet at 30 to 100 astronomical units, that is beyond the orbit of Neptune. So that is another home of comet, and this is what we call Kuiper belt. Popularly it is called Kuiper belt, but as word Kuiper belt, some people write it as word Kuiper belt. Some people write just Kuiper belt. So big question, where did Oort cloud and Kuiper belt come from? So I discussed this in the beginning. When these small planetesimals formed in the solar disk, Jupiter like some bodies formed, Jupiter played a major role. So after the formation of the Jupiter, it started migrating towards the sun. And during this migration, these small bodies were scattered in all directions by the large gravitational field of Jupiter. And then it migrated up to 1.5 astronomical unit, and then it started moving out again. And again, so this asteroidal belt, it crosses twice. So during this crossing, it uh, scattered most of these small bodies in different directions, including Oort cloud or this Kuiper belt also. In Kuiper belt also we expect some bodies from the beginning of the formation of solar system. So this is how we can explain this uh, Oort cloud or Kuiper belt. So this Jupiter plays important role in the Jupiter and Saturn, both they play important role in the formation of Oort cloud and the Kuiper belt. So comets are found in two main, as we discussed, in two main regions. This is Kuiper belt. This cartoon is showing here. So at the center you have this central part is expanded here. So you have the orbit of Neptune, then you have this Kuiper belt, and then this is shown here also. This is the asteroid belt, and then this spherical distribution. This is a cross section is shown here. This spherical distribution is the Oort cloud. So Kuiper belt beyond Neptune orbit, that is 45 astronomical unit. Mainly short period comets. Short period means the period less than 200 years. These comets are coming from, and these are periodic comets. They are coming from Oort cloud, sorry, Kuiper belt region. Oort cloud, the extension is supposed to be 50,000 astronomical unit to 100,000 astronomical unit. And from this period, sometime comet approaches towards the inner region of the solar system, and usually these are long period comets. Again, this I have discussed this. Now see, part of the comet I partly discussed once again. Nucleus. Nucleus is the main body where the material is confined. This is relatively solid, loosely bound, but uh, stable, mostly ice and gas with a small amount of dust and other solids, which include hydrocarbon and silicates. Nucleus is less than 50 kilometers across. So this is one example. This is comet Halley. This is the nucleus. Black part is nucleus, and then this sunlight is here. The material is evaporating in this direction, which is uh, appearing bright due to scattering of light. And this cometary material is dark, very dark. The albedo is less than 4%. If you imagine you could see this comet with your eyes, it will be like a coal tar, what you see on the road. So comets are relics from the beginning of the solar system. So these are small bodies which could not get into any planet and left out bodies. They are relics from the beginning of the solar system. There's some example. These are important objects. Wild 2. This was the target for Stardust mission. The size is 5.5 kilometer by 4 kilometer by 3.3 kilometer. Albedo is 0.4. And this was the target for Stardust mission. Then this is 9P Temple 1. This was the target for Deep Impact mission. Its size is 7.6 kilometer by 5 kilometer by 4.8 kilometer. And this is Hartley. See, when this Deep Impact mission, after visiting this, it further went into space, and it took this image of Hartley comet. So comet nuclei normally we call dirty snowball because it's a mixture of ice and dust. The size is typically from 100 meter to 40 kilometer. The composition is rock, dust, water, ice, ozone gases, CO, CO2, methane, ammonia, etc. Shape is irregular due to small mass and low gravity. As I said, the low gravity cannot go into spherical symmetric shape. Recent observation revealed dry dust or rocky surface, suggesting that ices are hidden below the crust. So normally, if you from the space mission, their pictures are taken, so the surface appears dry, completely dry. But when comet comes to close to the sun, you see that ices, water, ice, and all that thing. That means these ices are hidden below the crust. Comet also contain variety of organic compounds, methane, hydrogen cyanide, formaldehyde, ethanol, ethane, and some long-chain hydrocarbon and amino acids. Amino acid glycine has been detected in the comet dust recovered by Stardust mission. Coma can be, now see, the nucleus get evaporated and a coma, a circularly distributed gas around the nucleus takes place. So that is what we call coma. The coma can be much larger than the sun. The process of outgassing starts at the comet. As the comet gets close enough to the sun, where water ice and other ice begin to sublimate. Hydrogen cloud, millions of kilometer diameter, but very sparse envelope. This is this hydrogen envelope. Dust tail, up to 10 million kilometer long and composed of smoke-sized dust particles driven off the nucleus by escaping gases. This is the most prominent part of the comet to the unaided eye. The iron tail, as much as several hundred long, composed of plasma laced with rays and streamers caused by the interaction with the solar wind, which I explained earlier. See, asteroids or comet, I discussed this, but again repeat here. The only distinction between asteroid and comet is the presence of coma and tail that appear as comet approaches the sun. But with several visits of the comet, these ices are lost, so the nucleus which is left will be very similar to the asteroid. I'll skip this. Visiting comets means there were several missions where experiments were conducted by just going onto the comet. The reason is that we need to know, before visiting comet, we need to know orbit very accurately. Comet have large relative velocities. So visiting spacecraft not from the Earth will face debris of small particles flying. So there are various difficulties when you visit comets. These difficulties are listed here because a small particle when hit the experiment, that may spoil the experiment. Halley comet has a retrograde orbit, so the relative velocity is about 70 km per second. The GR2 spacecraft passed within 600 kilometers of the nucleus. So by visiting this, what was discovered was reflectivity was only 4% of the light. Darker, so it's very dark. Most of the surface is covered with a thick dust crust through which gas cannot escape. Gas evaporated from the comet comes from vent or jets on only about 10% of the surface. So this is the morphology of the surface. See, Stardust mission, a few remarks on this mission, why it is important to visit this. This is a typical dust silicate particle. See, it's very irregular particle, which is captured in Earth upper atmosphere. So now this Stardust mission, the objective was to pick up some dust. So they had some kind of gel. Then when this gel moved through this, some of the dust particles get captured within the gel. So this is the picture which this is the picture of several kind of particles. They form tracks within the gel. So now what you see, majority of particles, they are very fluffy. They are getting disintegrated, and at the end there is a solid core, solid nucleus. So this is most refractive material core which is here. So looking at this track, see, some tracks are like carrot shape, but at the end you have this carrot. So the idea is this, that dust particles, there is a nucleus, and then some ice will accumulate on this dust particle and will form a larger dust particle. This core is a crystalline material. See, what was discovered that these dust particles, 30% of the material is crystalline. Now the question is, to form the crystalline material, we need high temperature. If we assume that comets are coming from the far distances where the temperature is very low, this crystalline material cannot be formed. We expect the dust particle to be amorphous, but more than 30% of this is crystalline. This means that these crystals can form closer to the sun. So there should be some mechanism through which this crystalline material formed closer to the sun, and then it was thrown out in the outer region and it got mixed with the solar nebula material there. The question is how this scheme will work. So whether this scheme is okay or not, work is going on, but this is important, and there should be some mixing in the solar nebula. But of today, we don't know any mechanism through which this mixing can take place, but we have to understand this. Other important point about comet study is see, one point is as we discussed that Earth is a terrestrial planet. It formed close to the sun, and in that condition only rocky material and metals can condense to form the planet. Earth has so much water, The oceans, two-thirds of the earth is ocean. So much water is there, apart from life and organic material. The question is how this, how the water came to the earth. So this is to be explained. Now the one hypothesis that at one stage when this Jupiter was migrating inward or outward, lot of these asteroid comets, they heated the earth also. They were flung in all directions, but millions of such bodies, they heated earth also. And they brought water and organic material with them. Now, what is the proof of this? So there was one experiment. If you look at the D2H ratio in various comets, asteroid, and seawater, the D2H ratio for Earth is here. It's 10 power 4 something. And in case of comets, earlier the belief was that comet brought the water. This is Rosetta mission, is the 2014. D2H ratio measured is here. It is much higher, 3 times more, 3 to 4 times higher than the water D2H ratio. And in some other comets also it was measured, Comet Halley and several comets. Most of the comets, they are showing higher D2H ratio. There are some 2 Jupiter family comets where the D2H ratio is closer to the water ice, sea water D2H ratio. So looking at this, it is unlikely that the water was completely brought by the comets, which was a hypothesis. But again, if you look at the asteroids, some of the asteroids, their D2H ratio is very much comparable to the seawater D2H. So it is very likely that the water to the earth is brought by asteroid. So when Jupiter was migrating inward, these asteroids were also thrown inward and outward also. So many asteroids, they hitted Earth and they brought water with them. So this is the present scenario, but it is to be further studied. Then there are some other things like, see, if you look at Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, Jupiter, their D2H ratio is much, much smaller. See, the reason is that these are gaseous bodies, and due to differentiation in hydrogen and deuterium, the hydrogen may differentiate it faster compared to deuterium, so you have lesser this. But in asteroids, because it got intact in solid, it cannot differentiate further. So that is the reason it is less. And in Earth, because this deuterium was brought by these asteroids, so we have relatively much higher deuterium compared to the other planet. So this is interesting area to work again. Okay, I have some more time, I guess. You were telling...
Sir, we can if convenient to you, we can just conclude. You can take five more minutes if possible.
Okay, quick.
Okay.
So so from Mount Abu we conducted some experiment. So we did polarimetry, we did the spectroscopy. I'll quickly show some result. So this is a small spectrometer attached to a small 20-inch telescope, and then this was attached to the 1.2 meter telescope also. Then this comet Lovejoy was studied. and the spectra, this is the kind of spectra we get for these sources. And using this spectra, we can study chemical composition, um, production rate of various gases and dust in the comet. So this spectrum was taken on this, and this is published in Astronomical Journal. So these are the results of this. Comet shows large positive asymmetry as evidenced by this. Dust to gas ratio remains fairly constant. Then A at that, this is proxy for dust production rate. This was studied. But other interesting thing is this asteroid. This asteroid was studied. This is a near Earth asteroid. Its spectrum doesn't show any signature of molecular bands. So this is studied in different phases. This is the spectrum, but we hardly see any emission as we saw in case of comets. So then this was studied at various phase angles, several phase angles, and then if you plot, sorry, if you plot this polarization was also measured using imaging polarimeter on 1.2 meter telescope for this object, um, and these are plotted here. So this is the fitted curve, and this is some the red point shows some data for other sources, and this so this is how you can study this various comets. So to summarize, that comets are interesting. Comets and asteroids are interesting objects to study. Lot of national and international efforts are going on. Lot of missions are planned to go to comet and asteroids. So seems future is bright in this direction. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, thank you so much for this wonderful lecture, sir. Now I think we can take the questions from the participants. Sir, can you just stop share the screen?
Okay, let me see. Allow participant, right?
No, just stop share from the top. Top, you can do stop share. Okay, we have many questions. We can take one by one. Yes, sir, no problem.
If this is going down.
There will be an option of stop share in the between when you take your cursor.
Okay, okay.
Done, sir. Yes,
Okay.
we have many questions. If you permit, sir, we can take 2-3 questions.
I'll be happy to. Yes. I'll be very happy to answer questions.
Yes. We have one question from Dusha Pratik.
Okay.
Hello. Yes, Pratik.
Question.
Hello, Pratik. Yes. Yes, we will take the next question quickly. Yes, we have one question from Devanshi Sholanki. Yes, ma'am, please. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
I think she cannot hear.
You can hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you, but I think the...
Okay.
Just a minute, sir. Just a minute. Sorry for the delay. There is some. Yes, just a minute, sir. I'll be very quick.
You take your time. I'm free actually. No problem.
Yes, sir. One more question from Kaulesh. Yes, Kaulesh, can you speak? Hello. Yes, sir. So I think we can take questions from even chat. I'll be speaking the question one by one.
Yeah, but, huh.
Yes,
They can write
sir.
question. I can.
Yes, yes.
Huh.
There is one question from Abhishek Khandelwal. Can we estimate the age of solar system by studying comets?
No, not directly. But from if you consider asteroid, some of the asteroids they eventually hit Earth, and then those pieces we call meteorite. From those meteorite age is estimated using radioactive dating techniques.
Okay. Yes. So one more question from Parik Kaushal Kumar is asking that, sir, as you said, the main reason for ocean is hitting of asteroids and comets. Why there are not oceans on Mars?
Mars, number one, Mars has no atmosphere. Number one, main reason is Mars has no magnetic field, right?
Yes.
And due to this, the solar wind and UV radiation, they take away the atmosphere along with them. So they deplete this atmosphere. So in case of Mars, initially there was water, but because as the magnetic field was lost, the atmosphere was lost, water evaporated quickly and also lost. So magnetic field is important for this.
Yes, sir. One more question. Uh, is in orbit in the Earth, how many asteroids at that time?
I did not get.
Okay, sir, I'll read one more time. As comet and asteroid goes to path to sun, how they get large velocity?
Um, See, orbital velocities are fixed. A comet, any body in the solar system, their orbit is fixed. There's a two-body orbit. So, um, orbit of comet is elliptical, highly elliptic. So, when they approach the sun, they are to the nearest point, that is aphelion. So, in elliptic orbit, if a body is near aphelion, perihelion, that is nearest point, its velocity will be higher compared to the aphelion, that is the farthest point. This is the second law of Kepler. So conservation of angular momentum. So velocity is based on elliptic orbit, ellipticity of the orbit.
Yes, sir. Sir, and the last question we can take is, can we effectively do asteroid mining and meet the energy need of the Earth?
Um, See, I cannot answer this question in detail, but there are plans to mine asteroid for precious minerals. There are plans. Or as far energy is concerned, I did not get what it means. But for precious minerals, yes, many international laboratories, they are planning if they can mine asteroids for very precious minerals.
Okay, sir. I think that's the end of the question and answer session. Now, I would thank you so much, sir. And now I would like to invite our head of the department of St. Xavier's College,
Before,
Dr.
before
Has.
1 minute.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
See,
Please.
if students have any question, they can email me question
Yes,
or WhatsApp.
definitely. We are going to send the feedback form after this lecture. So you can keep your questions and your queries in that form, and we will send all the queries to sir, and sir will be answering your questions shortly. Yes. Now, may I invite Dr. Rajesh Iyer, sir, to thank the speaker and invite our father principal. Please, sir, over to you.
Thank you so much, sir, for transporting us to this wonderful world of planets, meteors, meteorites, comets, asteroids. We were highly illuminated, enlightened by your talk, and the amount of information you gave about the classification of the planets, the terrestrial, the gaseous one, the formation of the asteroid belt, why there is no planet between Mars and Jupiter, meteoroids, its composition, comets, the difference between the comets and asteroids, and very interestingly, the formation of the water body on Earth because of the asteroid hitting the Earth. So many other things, and I'm sure the students and the participants are going to be terribly fascinated, and many of them are going to be inspired by this. Thank you so much. And I also like to welcome Father Principal, Father Lance. Welcome, Father.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh, sir.
And Tushar bhai, thank you very much.
So if you can just say a few words and inspire us, sir.
Yes, Father Principal.
Yes, I think firstly, thanks to the Department of Physics, to Rajesh sir, under your leadership, and I know with the able support of people like Dr. Tushar Pandya, and then our ex-students like Chintan and Harshal, several others who have been involved in taking this initiative. I think it's a very important initiative. You may be locked down, but you are not locked up. And as long as you are locked down, finding creative ways to understand things, getting experts to share, and also getting a very large number of people from different institutions together. This is something that is very positive, and I think all of you who have organized it need to be really congratulated. My special thanks. I heard part of Dr. Umesh Joshi's lecture was very, very interesting, and I'm sure you will enjoy the third lecture that you have, and the third speaker that you have lined up tomorrow. And I'm sure we need to explore this method of really teaching and learning. Thanks to COVID, we have an opportunity to do something like this, and we must take it forward. So thanks very much for all of you who have taken the trouble to organize it, and those who have taken the trouble to listen. You could have very well have slept it out during this lockdown, but I think it speaks volumes for your interest in the subject. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Father. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Father, for your inspiring words. Now, at last but not the least, I would like to invite Kenil for the vote of thanks to present the vote of thanks for this lecture. Yes, Kenil.
Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning to everyone. It is my privilege to offer a vote of thanks for this session of your webinar on observational and theoretical astronomy.
Kenil, there is some noise.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Is it okay?
No, there is some echo.
No noise now.
Hello. Is it audible
Yes.
now?
Yes, you can continue.
Yes. Good evening to everyone. It is my privilege to offer a vote of thanks for this session of your webinar on observational and theoretical astronomy. I hope you have enjoyed this session. It was a wonderful and productive session. Sir, I started with solar system detection of exoplanet, even very informative things regarding origin, composition, and types of asteroid and comets also. Sir explained results and spectra we got from the Mount Abu Observatory of asteroids. On behalf of Astronomical Club of St. Xavier's College, Ahmedabad, I heartily thank to Dr. U.C. Joshi sir, who have given us a precious time for our webinar on this very short notice. I want to thank St. Xavier's College, Ahmedabad, our principal, Dr. Father Lancy D. Cruz, for joining us, our HOD Rajesh Iyer sir, our mentor Tushar sir, who is guiding us 24/7 to make this seminar happen. Physics for Tomorrow and members of Essence Tech, Mr. Harshal and Chintan, for their kind support. And the participants of the session, we are overwhelmed by your response and enthusiasm. And last but not the least, our organizing team of members of Astronomical Club, Jahan, Vaibhav, Bhavya, Kishan, Michelle, Suresh, Yash, and all the supporters. Without their hard work and 24/7 support, we will not able to achieve this grand success without them. Thank you.
Yes. With this, I would like to once again thank our today's speaker and all the dignitaries who were present over here and for motivating us. Thank you so much. Once again, we will meet tomorrow morning at same time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
पचास पचपन मिनट
Close the session. Chintan, close the session.
Hello.